For 8 years, doctors told Oliver Hart the same thing. His son's deafness was irreversible. The billionaire spent millions flying across continents, consulting the world's top specialists. They all shrugged. Then his new maid noticed something no one else had seen, and what she discovered would change everything. Oliver Hart had everything money could buy: private jets, mansions, more wealth than most see in 10 lifetimes. But his 8-year-old son Shah had never heard a sound. Oliver tried everything: Johns Hopkins, Switzerland, Tokyo. Every specialist said the same thing: irreversible. Accept it. But Oliver couldn't accept it. Shah was all he had left. His wife Catherine died giving birth to their son. So Oliver kept searching, kept spending, kept begging God for an answer. He didn't know the answer would come from the woman he'd just hired to clean his floors. Victoria Deer was 27, no medical degree, no credentials, just a woman trying to pay her grandmother's nursing home bills. But she noticed something about Shah that every specialist had missed, something dark in his ear. One evening while Oliver was away, she made a decision that would either save the boy's life or destroy her own. Ted. The Silent Mansion. The Hart Mansion stretched across 40 acres of Connecticut land. From outside, it looked like a dream: Georgian columns, sparkling windows, perfectly trimmed gardens. But inside lived a suffocating silence. Not peaceful silence. This silence was heavy, thick, like something had died and no one had buried it. Servants moved through hallways without speaking, footsteps soft and careful. They'd learned quickly. Mr. Hart liked things quiet. No music, no television, no laughter. Just silence. And somewhere in that silence, a father was drowning. Oliver sat in his study most evenings, staring at the family portrait above the fireplace. Catherine, his wife, her smile frozen in oil paint. Next to her, a younger version of himself looking hopeful. Between them, Shah at 3 years old. Before Oliver understood, his son would never hear his mother's name. Catherine died the day Shah was born. Complications, the doctors said. Oliver held her hand while the light left her eyes. She tried to say something, lips moving, but no sound came, just like their son. Oliver never forgave himself, so he did the only thing he knew. He spent money. Millions of dollars on the best specialists on Earth. Every doctor said the same thing: congenital deafness, nothing we can do. Accept it. But how could he accept that his boy would live in silence forever? How could he accept that Shah would never hear his father say, "I'm sorry your mother isn't here"? Victoria arrived on a cold Tuesday morning in October. She stood at the estate gate, clutching her bag, trying to steady her breathing. This was her last chance. Back in Newark, her grandmother lay in a nursing home bed. The bills were 3 months overdue. If Victoria didn't pay, they'd transfer her grandmother to a state facility where people were forgotten. Victoria couldn't let that happen. Her grandmother had raised her after her parents died in a car accident when Victoria was 11. That woman deserved better. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Patterson, met her at the door. Stern face, sharp eyes. "You'll clean. You'll stay quiet. You'll keep to yourself. Mr. She warned Victoria about the previous maid, who'd gotten too friendly with the boy, and was gone within a week. As they walked through the mansion, Victoria kept her eyes down. But she noticed the oppressive silence, the way servants moved without smiling, the heaviness that hung in the air. Then she saw him, a small boy sitting on the marble staircase, arranging toy cars in a perfect line. He didn't look up. His shoulders were hunched, movements careful. But what caught Victoria's attention was the way he kept touching his right ear, briefly, almost like a habit, and the tiny wince that crossed his face each time. Victoria's chest tightened. She'd seen that look before. Days passed. Victoria cleaned floors, wiped windows, folded linens. She kept her head down, but she couldn't stop watching Shah. Every morning, the same routine. The boy would sit alone in the sunroom, surrounded by model airplanes and puzzle pieces. The other servants avoided him, not from cruelty, but from fear, as if his silence was contagious. But Victoria saw something different. She saw a desperately lonely child, a boy who pressed his hand against windows, watching the world move without him. She saw how he'd look at his father when Oliver walked past without stopping, and how his shoulders would sink lower. She saw how he touched his ear over and over, wincing, and no one noticed. One afternoon, Victoria saw Shaw struggling with a model airplane wing. Before she could stop herself, she knelt down and fitted it into place. Shaw looked up at her. For a moment they just stared at each other. Then the tiniest smile flickered at the corner of his mouth. Victoria smiled back. He waved. That night, she couldn't stop thinking about that wave. Over the following weeks, Victoria and Shaw developed their own language. She'd leave him candy wrapped in gold foil. He'd leave her drawings of airplanes. She learned his personal signs. 2 taps on his chest meant happy. Pointing to the sky meant he was thinking about stars. Palms pressed together meant he felt safe. But Mrs. Patterson noticed. "I warned you," she said sharply. "Mr. Hart has rules." Victoria tried to explain the boy was lonely, but Mrs. Patterson cut her off. "That's not your concern. You're here to clean, not to mother that child, not to fix what can't be fixed. If Mr. That night, Victoria thought about her grandmother, the bills, the paycheck she desperately needed. She thought about Shaw's lonely eyes, his pain, the dark thing she'd seen in his ear. She prayed, asking God what to do, but no answer came. The next morning, Victoria heard a soft thud, then a muffled cry. She found Shaw sitting on a stone bench in the garden, both hands pressed against his right ear, face twisted in pain, tears streaming down his cheeks in complete silence. Victoria ran to him, kneeling. She gently signed, asking if she could look. He hesitated, fear flickering across his face. But then he leaned forward. "Trust." Victoria tilted his head toward the morning light and looked. There it was, deep inside his ear canal, something dark, dense, glistening. Bigger than before, clearer. Her mind raced back to Marcus, her cousin, who'd been deaf for 6 years because of a blockage. One simple procedure changed his life. Victoria's hands trembled. She signed to Shaw that there was something in his ear that shouldn't be there, something they needed to tell his father about. Panic exploded across Shaw's face. "No doctors," he signed frantically. Victoria's heart shattered. 8 years of specialists, 8 years of procedures, 8 years of pain with no relief. He'd learned that help meant suffering. Victoria knew what she'd seen. She knew what it meant. But what could she do? Tell Oliver? He'd call more specialists, the same ones who'd missed it for years. Do nothing? Watch this child suffer? 3 days passed. Victoria couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that dark mass blocking everything, and Shaw's face, the pain, the silent tears. She thought about her brother Daniel, dead at 14 after being sick for months. They couldn't afford doctors. She watched him die in her arms, silent, just like Shaw's world. She'd promised herself that day. Never again would she stand by while a child suffered. But this was different. This was a billionaire's son, and she was nobody. "Lord," she whispered, "I'm scared." She thought of her grandmother's words. The Lord doesn't call the equipped, child. Victoria made a decision. Tomorrow, if Shaw showed pain again, she would act. She would trust what God had shown her, even if it cost her everything. The next evening, Oliver was away on business. Victoria heard a thump and ran. Shaw lay on the hallway floor, curled up, both hands pressed to his ear, face contorted in agony. Silent tears streamed down his cheeks. Victoria dropped beside him, cradling his head gently. The dark mass was clearly visible, swollen. Her hands trembled. This was the moment. She pulled out sterilized tweezers she'd taken from the first aid kit 3 days earlier. Shaw looked up at her, scared but trusting. Victoria steadied herself and carefully moved the tweezers into his ear canal. She could feel the dense mass. She hooked it gently, pulled. Resistance. She pulled again, slow and careful. Then release. Something dark and wet slid free into her palm. Years of buildup that had stolen his hearing. Shaw gasped. A real, audible gasp. His hand flew to his ear, eyes going wide. He sat up suddenly, looking around like he'd never seen the hallway before. He pointed at the grandfather clock on the wall. "Tick," he whispered. Victoria's tears fell. Yes, baby. That's the clock. Shah's whole body trembled. He touched his throat, feeling the vibration of his own voice. His mouth opened again. Then footsteps, heavy, fast. Oliver Hart stood in the doorway, face white, eyes locked on his son on the floor, and the blood on Victoria's hands. He rushed forward, pushing Victoria aside, grabbing Shah. Shah flinched at the sound, so loud, so sharp. Oliver froze. Shah touched his father's face. Your voice. Oliver's legs buckled, but then his eyes landed on Victoria's hands, the blood, the tweezers. Terror overtook wonder. Security! Guards appeared. Sir, please, Victoria said, holding out her palm. This was inside his ear. This is why he couldn't hear. You're not a doctor! Oliver roared. Shah screamed, actually screamed. As guards dragged Victoria away, she looked back at Shah. It's okay. At the hospital, doctors swarmed Shah. Oliver paced until a nurse brought him to Dr. Matthews' office. The doctor slid a folder across the desk. Oliver opened it, circled in red. Dense obstruction noted in right ear canal. Oliver's blood turned to ice. Dr. Matthews nodded. But there's no follow-up, no procedure scheduled. The words hit like a bullet. They'd known. They'd seen the blockage and left it there because his money was too good. They'd kept his son deaf on purpose. Oliver stood. He had a maid to find and a lifetime of apologies to make. Victoria sat in the security office, praying for Shah. The door opened. Oliver stood there, eyes red, face broken. Her name spoken softly, reverently. Mr. He walked toward her. Don't explain. He fell to his knees. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. The doctors knew. They saw the blockage years ago and left it there because my money was too good to cure. I trusted credentials and degrees and expensive hospitals. I threw millions at my son's problem and never once stopped to actually look at him. But you did. You saw him. I just loved him, sir. Oliver stood. They walked to Shah's hospital room together. The boy sat on the bed, headphones on, listening to music for the first time, face pure wonder. When he saw them, he ran straight to Victoria, wrapping his arms around her waist. Thank you, he said, voice rough, unpracticed, beautiful. Victoria knelt and held him tight. You were always worth hearing, baby. Shah looked at his father. Dad, I can hear your heart. Oliver dropped to his knees and pulled his son close. For the first time in 8 years, Shah heard his father cry. Victoria stood quietly beside them, finally letting herself breathe. God had answered her prayer. Not with money, not with medicine, but with willing hands and a faithful heart. Sometimes that's all a miracle needs.